Tomorrow, Boston University is ground zero in the fight against the brain injury known as CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That's the condition associated with concussions, often received during contact sports like football. The Boston University CTE Center has now studied the brains of 94 deceased NFL players. 90 of those players had CTE. Conference tomorrow includes researchers as well as former players and their family members. CTE, as you probably know, is a degenerative brain disease with symptoms that can include depression, memory loss, aggressive behavior. One of the more well-known cases involved former Patriots linebacker Junior Seau, who ultimately took his own life. Just last month, the study found that young football players between the ages of 6 and 14 experienced structural changes in their white brain matter from contact. This occurred even if they weren't diagnosed with a full-blown concussion. And kids with concussions from contact sports of all kinds have soared in recent years. An analysis of claims by Blue Cross Blue Shield found a 71% increase in concussions between 2010 and 2015. Joining me are two participants in the conference, former Harvard football player and pro wrestler Chris Nowinski, who is the co-founder of the Concussion Legacy Foundation. He suffered from concussions himself, still deals with some of those issues. Good to see you, Chris.
Good to see you, Jim.
Also here is Sylvia Mackey, whose husband John Mackey was a Hall of Fame tight end for the Baltimore Colts. He died in 2011 after a 10-year battle with dementia. It's great to see you, Sylvia, too.
Thank you.
You know, I watched your husband play, and not only did I admire him as an incredible football player, I'm a former union guy.
Okay.
What your husband did for the Players Association is just staggering, how he helped the players. We know that public face of him. You knew the private face of him. What was life like for him and you after this dementia thing was first diagnosed?
Well, he could only at that point remember football after he was diagnosed. But then you look back 4 or 5 years, and what leads you to the diagnosis? Strange behavior. So when the diagnosis came, it was actually a relief, because this was not the John Mackey that I know, not the John Mackey I married.
How hard was that for you?
Well,
were you not a college sweetheart at Syracuse?
we were college sweethearts at Syracuse since we were both 18 years old. He's only 4 months older than I, and we got married 6 months after college. So to see him deteriorate like that it's so slow. It is heartbreaking, but I had to know what was going to come.
Are you convinced that blows to the head is what caused him to be like he was in his later years?
Later, Jim, I was. But, of course, when he was playing football, if somebody had told me, look at all that head damage he's taking, I would have said you're crazy.
You told us on the radio today how many average hits a player takes in a season. What was the number you said today?
Well, it's between 500 and 1,000, but some get in the 2,000s per season.
And I mentioned kids. I want to talk about kids. You know, pro players today, maybe not when John Mackey was playing, they at least know what the risks are, and I don't mean to cast it aside. The NFL, in my opinion, are the primary responsibility holders, but the players at least know. Talk about this kid thing that your colleague, Ann McKee, was involved in. What do we know about kids' brains and what tackle football does to them?
Well, we know that the young brain is far more susceptible to brain injury. It's rapidly changing, especially from the ages of 8 to 12. And we believe that what we're seeing is the longer you play football and the younger you start, the worse off you are, the greater chance you have for CTE, the greater chance you have for all of these disastrous things that can happen, because the brain was never evolved to take 10 or 20,000 blows to the head over a lifetime.
And your recommendation vis-a-vis kids is what?
Based on what we've seen, and there's a new study that we just published today showing markers of inflammation that are part of CTE being increased the number of years you play. So my opinion as a football guy who still thinks there's value to adults playing football if they want to, is that there's just no way that kids before high school should be playing tackle football. And if you're a parent and you want to do your kid a favor, do not enroll them in tackle football until they're in high school.
Can I ask you about one parent in particular? Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Tom Brady said on EEI last year about his young kids, and they're young, whatever they want to do, that's what they'll do, and I'll do my best to support the things they love, as opposed to LeBron James, who said, my kids are not playing football or hockey.
Right.
When they're in high school, they can make that decision. When you hear someone who has such power and such stature say things like that, what does that do for you?
I wonder, where is their head? I was at a soccer game just last week where my grandson, 6 years old, was playing soccer. Another player fell, hit his head on the ground, and gets up holding it like this. And the mother stands up and yells, shake it off. They need you in there. I wanted to slap her. Whereas years ago, before Chris, I wouldn't have thought like that.
You know, when you see Jordan Reed, this player with Washington, I said the Redskins today, he chastised me, and he's right, the Washington football team. When you see a player like Jordan Reed, who's a terrific player, who's now going back and playing after 5 or 6 concussions, it's unclear. And again, it's he knows what's going on, he's making a voluntary decision, he's an adult. But how do you react to that after having lived through what you lived through?
Well, he's young, he thinks it won't happen to him. That's it. I mean, you have to live like that, too. You don't not drive your car because you think you're going to have an accident.
Yeah. Can you watch a game?
Yes, I can.
And well, you're almost saying that.
You see how I'm saying
you almost say that with guilt.
Right.
I mean, but are you thinking? I mean, what are you thinking?
I still love the game. They've got to improve it. There's some danger in everything.
You know, I want to ask you about another, forget Tom Brady. There's also, there have been doubters about the seriousness of concussions. Take a listen to what Donald Trump said at a recent rally after a woman passed out in the heat. Here's Trump.
That woman was out cold. Now she's coming. See? We don't go by these new and very much softer NFL rules. Concussion. Got a little ding on the head. No, you can't play for the rest of the season. Our people are tough.
A little ding on the head. Isn't that what you're still confronting? No, I'm still looking at his head and hand here. Isn't that what you're still confronting? I mean, it's not just Donald Trump. There are a lot of people who think, tough it out. You know, we saw the movies. We know Sylvia Mackey. We knew John Mackey. We know about your work and Dr. Cantu's. But isn't that still a major theme?
It is. I mean, rarely are people dumb enough to say that on TV because they know that the media will jump on them for that because it sets a horrible example for kids. It's really hard to know. Your personal experience always trumps data. And if you got hit in the head and you're still fine today, you're going to say everyone else is fine. We didn't think this CT problem really existed. And now that we've looked at 228 brains of football players and nearly all of them had it who played more than a few years, now we need to look at that data and go, let the data drive the decisions.
Is the NFL still in denial about that? I mean, I know the vice president earlier this year said, oh, sure, there's a connection between the head contact and CT. They're still in denial.
They're still talking out of both sides of their mouth. A lot of owners have disowned that statement who are very prominent, and they're still funding and underwriting youth football, and that's the thing that we need to end. We can't have the guys making money at the top doing this to our children as well.
You know, you have, I said, I think 94 brains of former NFL players, 300-plus brains overall.
Yeah.
What have those brains and those donations from families, what advances have they led to?
Well, thank God there are folks like Sylvia who have made that donation. Because I spoke to her while John was still alive. And she's now one of all these families we actually have together at a family huddle. And
this legacy donor huddle is great with these families.
70 family members. Yeah, it's amazing. We've learned that one of the big things we've learned, CT is not related to concussions. So we talk about this being a concussion crisis, and I still do. We're the Concussion Legacy Foundation. But we've learned that there are hard hits to the head you take where you think you're fine, but we're actually proving there's damage. And I think that's the biggest takeaway.
What does it mean to you when you know that the brain of your husband, who you spent your life with, has helped create the awareness that he and you have helped create? What does that mean to you?
It means so much to me because, Jim, if he could have written the story himself, he would say, I would like my brain to be one of those.
Sylvia, you're terrific, by the way.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Chris,
Thank
thanks so much for your work. Really appreciate both of you.